Hello everyone and welcome to a new Sega Mega Drive / Genesis Castlevania Symphony of the Night Developer's Diary. Today, as promised, I'm going to give you a little demo of the Royal Chapel area. And getting straight down to business, if you check the video description, there will be a download link where you can download the ROM and then play that either on real hardware or on some kind of emulator. I have a Patreon account and I'll link that in the video description as well. For patrons, I always offer little early previews of things as well as little earlier playable demos. For example, the boss fight I offered for download last week, but of course I want everyone to be able to play it too, so I will periodically release these little demos for everyone to play for free too. And of course I'll be amiss not to mention the other people involved in the project, because it's not just a one-man job. You can see the credits for the people helping with the music and the graphics on your screen now, and I will include their social media links in the video description so you can follow their great work too. However, before everyone rushes off to play the game, I recommend you stick around for another minute or two. I'll let you know once we get to spoiler territory, because there's a few things I want to explain about the demo. One of the major things which seems to cause some confusion about my version of the game is the selections of resolutions available. If you press the A button here, you'll get the standard 256 horizontal resolution, which is the same as the original PlayStation version. However, I'm also offering the option to use 320 resolution. I'm calling this the widescreen mode because unlike the SotN version, in this 320 resolution I haven't distorted the graphics. Instead, I've kept the graphics the same, so if you played in the standard aspect ratio of an old CRT, the graphics will appear a bit squeezed, as you can see from this next screen. You can simply play this way on a regular CRT, but if you have a widescreen CRT or a screen, then if you want you can manually adjust the picture and you can stretch it out so that the circles look like circles and it roughly fits the widescreen aspect ratio. I think playing on a widescreen CRTV is probably the best way to play this version of the game, but unfortunately I don't have one myself, so if you do have one and don't mind taking the time to film a bit of yourself playing on it, then I'll put my link to my Twitter, my X account in the video description, so you can just tag me in. If you can upload it and tag it in, that'll be great because I'd love to see it. And if everyone has like a Sega Nomad or the Mega Drive 2, Mega Drive 3 or any other kind of these Mega Drive devices like the analog, I think it's called the analog MD or analog MG or something, I can't remember, feel free to test out on that too. It'd be great to see if it works and just play test it for me, and if there's any problems then I can see if I can fix them. But as far as I know, my demos all seem to work fine on different types of hardware, and if you don't have original hardware, the Mega Drive emulator I recommend will be Blast. After selecting the resolution, you'll come to this intro screen here, this scroll. So the text is the same as the original one, but I thought the original with the text just displaying in front of the same castle was a bit boring. So you can see I've mixed things up here and taken some of the artwork from some of the Castlevania art books and transferred them onto the Mega Drive. I also had this intro scene in my Christmas demo, but I've changed a few things. I've changed a few times here, plus the upgrading SGDK kind of messed up with this for some reason, so I had to do a bit of reprogramming, but it all seems to work fine. If you happen to see any bugs in here, then let me know, and if you want to skip it, you can simply press start. I will let it play out for now, so enjoy the music, and I'll be back in a second once we get to the title screen. Okay, so I hope everyone's suitably hyped up now to play the game. Just a couple more things to cover before we get into spoiler territory. So this screen here, eventually I'm going to make it as the options screen, but for now you can just press start to skip around it. Again, this is from one of the Castlevania art books. It didn't appear in the original PlayStation version of the game. On around the 24th of December last year, I released a video where I had a little demo of Castlevania Area of Sorrow, a little kind of tech art demo for the Mega Drive, and in that version I had it so you could play as Soma. I decided to keep him in this version too, this Castlevania game, and you can select him if you wish, but please note that I haven't fully optimized some of these animations and hitboxes and so on, so it might not play quite as smoothly as Alucard, although as you'll see playing this demo, Alucard still has these some control issues and animation issues that I need to fix in future too, but feel free to play as Soma, but note that it's going to be a bit more janky than Alucard. Once you select your character, you'll come to the level select. So as you can see, for the action version of the game, you're going to have pretty much 4 different paths you can go to. So there'll be hidden levels like Rondo of Blood, and I'm also going to have a Metroidvania version of the game too. So in this demo, it's going to stick to Roll Chapel, so you can't move around. You can see here, Roll Chapel is going to be the 5th level out of 6, so it should be the penultimate level, so it should be quite difficult, but I think so far I've made it a little bit too easy, I think, but you can let me know what you think as soon as you play the demo. And speaking of playing the demo, if you want to avoid any spoilers, then you can stop watching the video now, go and play it, and then come back, and I'll discuss what kind of changes I made and some things that need to be improved, and then after watching that, then you can leave some feedback, and any feedback is much appreciated. Okay, so for those of you who went to play the demo, have now come back to watch the video, welcome back, and I'm just going to explain the scope of the demo here. So first of all, I haven't put any candles in this particular version of the demo because I'm still not 100% certain on what kind of level design I'm going to have. I'm just doing some experimentation, and I don't want to take the time to carefully place all the candles and the sub-weapons and what's going to be in them because I think things are going to be changing in the future. So for now, you can just use the Bible sub-weapon. You will meet quite a few new enemies in this demo, and you can see now I'm facing off against the Bone Archer. For now, I've decided to stick pretty closely to how they were in the original game in terms of AI. I was thinking of making it a bit more like there's an archer enemy in Bloodstained Ritual of the Night who kind of jumps up and they can angle their arrow depending on where the player is, but that will require a lot of reworking of the artwork, so I'm going to stick to the original a bit more closely for now. As I'm walking up and down here, you probably notice that this is very different from the original game. So this is a new room, but using existing assets. And I really like this idea of using the existing assets of the original game, the tile sets in original ways, and creating new rooms with them, a new setup. So I'm quite pleased with this. So I think this particular room I'll probably keep for my action version of the game, and maybe I even find a way to slip it into the Metroidvania version, the adventure version of the game too. So I like the way it works out. So let's walk a bit more forward and face some more enemies. If I recall correctly, and it was a while ago when I programmed this enemy, they should back up as Alucard gets closer. That's the AI I made in the game. Although if Alucard happens to get too far away, they should start following him instead. And as you can see, I've also put in a nice surprise. So this behaviour wasn't in the original game, it's something I thought up as I walked past these beautiful big stained glass windows. I thought it might be neat if they tried to ambush you like this. So I've made it so they have this behaviour where some of them can hide and they can jump up and surprise you, and you can see I have it here again. So that's why I want people to avoid any spoilers. So hopefully most of you who wanted to play the demo, you played it and this was a nice little surprise for you and you didn't get it spoiled here. And one of the nice things about breaking the windows is you get a bit of added parallax scrolling. So of course if you jump up or go to the far left of the screen, you can see the forest in the background, but mostly it's you can't see it because you obviously got the walls in the middle. So I thought adding this and it's a bit of a waste because that forest takes up a lot of VRAM, but you don't get to see it very much. So I wanted to poke some holes into the foreground this way so you can see a bit more parallax scrolling. At this point you may have noticed that the music has stopped playing. That's because it's not looping. Now the track Requiem was done by Engelbart, and I think it's an excellent conversion to the Mega Drive. But I think when they're creating the music, the musicians have to add some kind of loop function inside the music, and Engelbart's done it for his other tracks here, but I think he's forgot to add it here, so it's something I need to talk to him about. But just take note that the music's going to stop looping at a certain point, so obviously it's something that we'll fix in future versions, but for now just bear with it. I'm making Alucard dance around a bit here because I want to show you the kind of animation work I've done. So I've actually done a lot of work on the backdash and the attack to make it look more like the original. I've got the frame times a bit more correct, although people were quite happy with the animation before. It should be even closer to the original now. That said, there's still a lot of things on my to-do list regarding Alucard and his basic animation and movement. And for example, when he backdashes and then does an attack, I need to change the timings of that so it's a bit closer to the original, and also the jumping arc and just many different things. So you'll definitely notice some bugs in the animation, and also how I think some of the movement, the attacking feels a little bit stiff at the moment, but don't worry, I'll fix that eventually. I'm kind of torn between doing more levels right now or concentrating more on the animation and movement, so there's always like a huge to-do list when doing these kind of projects, so it's just a case of deciding what to do and when. If you want to move on to the next room, you press the start button, then you'll skip to the next room. In future demos, I might change it so that you walk into the doorway as I did my very first demos, but for now I want to keep it like this so you can skip past any hard areas if you need to. Here is another new enemy, the corner guard. Before I release the demo, I'm going to re-put in his hitboxes so he can actually hurt you. At the moment, Alucard can hurt him, but he can't hurt Alucard, which is a bit unfair. So I think I've got the basic movement correct. I think maybe he's a bit too low on the stairs. I need to move him up a bit, so I'll try and fix that before I release the demo. But I think in terms of how he reacts to Alucard and his attack patterns, and I think he's working quite well, and at the moment at least he's not moving off into the floor or anything. So I remember I looked quite closely at what he was doing in the original, so I think I've mimicked it quite closely. But of course, if you notice any bugs or any strange behaviours, then let me know. I think this next enemy, the fire skulls, are one of my favourites in the game, so they're a kind of a Castlevania staple. I don't really like how the fire looks at the moment. It's something I ripped from the original and changed the colour, but at the moment it looks a little bit pixelated, so I think I need to do a bit more work on that. But I think the basic coding is working quite well. I think the hitbox is a bit too generous to Alucard. You can see here that if I keep my distance, my sword can hit him where he's not hitting me, so it makes it a bit easy. So where I have to nerf Alucard's hitbox a bit, attacking hitbox, or we have to maybe help the skull have a smaller hitbox. And just like in the original, once you hit the bottom one without destroying the top will fall to the ground. And I've programmed it so you either have to hit it, I think it's 4 times with the sword, or else as soon as he hits the ground that's not a slope, then he'll just explode automatically. The falling of the second skull itself is I think it's working okay most of the time, but there's still little changes I want to make because it's still a little bit buggy. Let me know if you see any strange behaviour. I definitely need to do a little bit more work on that, but for this demo I think it seems to be working okay. When our pixel artist for the project, Pyron, sent me the original version of this area of the game, he was only using 2 palettes of 15 colours for the foreground and background. While this original version did look nice, it did mean that the beautiful stained glass windows of the original were in the same purple as a lot of the rest of the level. When I mentioned this to Pyron, fortunately he managed to come through and he redesigned the corner guard so it could use the same palette as Alucard, and then with all skeleton enemies we basically use Alucard's palette anyway, so with that done we had suddenly an extra palette of 15 colours which could then be used to add more colour back to the stained glass windows. In the finished version I want to add a few more enemies than I have right now. This area is very difficult in terms of VRAM because there's so much detail in the backgrounds that there's not much left for the VRAM of the enemies. An Italian Mega Drive developer by the name of the Robos, who you may know mostly from his work on the Mega Drive version of R-Type, did help out a bit with some of the VRAM optimization, so a big thank you to him. But there's still a lot more work I need to do if I want to include all the enemies that I need in this particular area. For this next room, I eventually plan on maybe putting a couple of crow enemies here just to make it a bit more challenging rather than an empty room. You can see how I've actually made a few changes in terms of the Mega Drive version, because this is the action version, so I only need one kind of entrance into the boss area. While this room might look very kind of simple and straightforward, it was actually quite tricky in terms of using the palettes and getting the priorities correct, because you can see here I have these kind of banisters where their Alucard can appear behind them, but I also have an extra layer of parallax scrolling in the forest behind that. Now in the original version that Pyron sent me, the kind of forest was on the same layer as the building itself, which meant it wouldn't scroll, which is not such a big deal for this kind of small room, but I still wanted to restore it anyway, so that meant using a combination of sprites and foreground tiles for the foreground to make sure that we could maintain the parallax scrolling in the trees. You can see here in this debug mode that the green is the trees, the background layer, then we have the foreground layer in red, which is the building, and then finally in pink we have all these sprites on the screen. While it is pretty straightforward to make each 8x8 tile in the foreground either high priority to appear in front of Alucard or low priority to appear behind him, when it comes to any tiles which aren't perfect squares, it can create difficulties in terms of the palette use, because one single square in the same background layer cannot use the same 15 color palettes, so for those areas I needed to use the sprites instead. For this sub-boss fight I won't say too much because I already did a video just last week about how I analysed the original PlayStation version and found it much too easy, and how I used that knowledge to reprogram it so it's a bit more of a challenge in the Mega Drive version, and I will leave a link to that video in the video description if you want to check it out. I was actually going to make some changes to make the action's a little bit less predictable, but I got feedback from the patrons of the Patreon demo I released last week and who played it and said it's actually already pretty difficult, so I didn't want to make it any more difficult. Play it, let me know how it is, how you find it, whether you think it's too easy or difficult. Remember, it's supposed to be the sub-boss of the 5th level of the game, so it should be a bit of a challenge, but perhaps not too much. It's not the end of the game boss, but I definitely wanted it to be not easy to get by. So let me know how you find it, how it compares, for example, to the bosses maybe of the 4th level of Castlevania Bloodlines, whether it's or you read the 5th level of Rondo of Blood, whether you think it's easier or more difficult in those games. You should be able to defeat it without taking any damage. I've managed to do it myself, so I always like to do like a no damage challenge to make sure it's designed correctly, just as the Rondo of Blood designers did. So I think it's not too bad. I think you can definitely defeat it once you know the patterns, and that's part of the fun of the classic Castlevania games. One thing that a few people have mentioned over the past week, both the patrons who played demos as well as the people who watched the last week's video, was the background here. In the original PlayStation version, this particular room was a real kind of showpiece for the hardware with its polygons and so on. And while I obviously have no kind of hope of recreating it on 16-bit hardware, I do have some ideas of making it a bit more impressive than it is now, because now it's just a placeholder. I want to maybe add some line scrolling and maybe even some background tile animation to make things move a bit in the background, but that's going to take a lot of time. So for now I'm going to leave it as it is, and that's something that I'll probably challenge I'll take up once the game is nearer to completion. While for now I have the Hippogriff boss in this area, I might move her back to her original place, and in this area have the sword enemy and use that as that big sword enemy as a sub boss instead. Now that enemy could use Alucard's palette, and the good thing about that is that means that we would have an extra palette to use on the windows. So just like with the Roll Chapel stairs, it means that we could maybe restore some colour to those beautiful stained glass windows in the background. While I have already done quite a bit of work on different areas of the Royal Chapel, I'm going to end this little taster demo here for now. Pushing start here will take you back to the very start of the ROM of the demo, and you can restart and replay again, maybe try the different resolutions. Actually, I think after playtesting it, I think the widescreen resolution is easier because you can see more to your left and right, and the original resolution is actually more difficult. At the end of this year, around Christmas time, I'll release a bigger demo as usual. And if you'd like to support my work further and get early previews on what I'm working on, then please support my Patreon. For now, you can have a quick brief preview here of the kind of stuff I'm trying to do in that second half of the Royal Chapel. Okay, there's nothing left to do in this video apart from to thank everyone for watching, and if you like the content, don't forget to like and subscribe.
I'm interested in this.
And if you'd like to support my work further as well as get early previews and demos of what I'm working on, then don't forget I have a Patreon, and any support is much appreciated. The link will be in this video description.
You won't go unrewarded.
Until next time,
farewell.